I bought 70 houses in 3 years with my friend from college, and here's some of the biggest lessons I've learned. I gotta turn this off. It's making it so hot in here, dude. First lesson is what I call streets versus sheets. The first few deals we were looking at buying and the first few deals we ended up buying, in the spreadsheet, we always had rose-colored glasses. When you're trying to get your first few deals, the desire you have to get started can cause you to inflate the inputs you put in the spreadsheet. What I mean by that is you may think you are being accurate in how you're underwriting a deal by what you assume for vacancy rate, maintenance, rehab, and even purchase price, leaving out closing fees. But in reality, every one of those numbers you're padding just a little bit because you have a bias. What ends up happening when you pad every single one of those items, like, you pad the rehab a little bit on the vacancy, a little bit on the maintenance, and a little bit on the collections, your numbers get thrown off and they will not translate to the streets or how the property actually performs. So for our first few deals, I was extremely guilty of this. So bad that I even I borderline deleted occupancy because in my head, I was like, of course this place is going to stay filled. Like it's a rental. Like I don't need to worry about that, just because I wanted to justify the numbers so badly because I wanted to buy it so badly. I wanted to get started in real estate. So what I found is that little adjustments in each one of these categories can drastically change how appealing a deal is. In a spreadsheet, any deal can look great. All these adjustments I was making too weren't anything that obvious, just like, oh, it's a 5% vacancy rate versus 10%. And then 10% maintenance reserves instead of 15%. I know that's really high, but when we're looking at low income, it should have been higher. And then like collections, assuming that everyone will always pay every month. I was naive and didn't understand. I was like, well, they legally have to pay. So of course I'll put 100% collections. Stupid. For low income housing, 70 to 80% collections rate, honestly, I think is safe. And again, that's being a little aggressive, but I'm trying to emphasize the point that it is really tempting and easy to pad your underwriting in the spreadsheets in a way that will not accurately represent how the deal performs in the streets. Back to us, our first bundle of deals, I'd say our first 5 deals, I was guilty of this. They were all low income housing. So for the rehab estimates, we ballparked it. We rushed and didn't get actual quotes. So again, in the spreadsheets, of course it looked great. So first thing was the rehab. We were wrong about the rehab quotes prices because we didn't check every item and we didn't get full enough bids. We had one contractor walk it that gave us a ballpark, threw it in the spreadsheet, said, yep, the numbers work, moved on. Going back to purchase price, we ran our numbers not including title and closing fees. Pretty easy mistake there. Vacancy rate. This is our biggest mess up. We were buying low income housing and we were assuming it was going to have the occupancy rate of more premium housing. 5% vacancy rate in low income is unheard of unless it's Section 8. A more realistic vacancy rate would be 15 to even 20% for the type of houses we were going after. We didn't even give it 10. We assumed 5%. So big mistake there. Next thing, maintenance. Older properties will have higher maintenance and repair costs. 10% normally would be a decent reserve. However, we were looking at houses that were built before 1940 and we weren't even replacing every single line item. So cast iron plumbing, out-of-date electrical, ancient water heaters, ancient roofs, foundation problems. We just thought because it's not a problem now, it won't be a problem in the future. And hey, if we put in 20% maintenance, then our numbers don't work in the spreadsheet and we can't buy the deal and we can't have that happen. So maintenance should have been higher. Collections, I already mentioned this, but low income assume lower. Our numbers actually ended up looking more like this. Oh, and rent. If you are not a property manager or you do not have at least a few years of experience in your market, I wouldn't trust your rent comps. Speak to a property manager. I would say don't even speak to a realtor because they're going to be biased. Speak to a property manager, get their actual estimate of rent, and use that in your model, not what you pull on Zillow, because Zillow might be pulling in some brand new premium finished house, but that's like, oh, it looks like it's nearby, but you're in a really bad part of town, really bad street. you're not going to get the same rent. So talk to a property manager for your rent assumption. Ours ended up looking more like this. First thing was the purchase price. We didn't factor in closing costs and fees. Super newbie mistake, very easy to correct, but already started off our numbers to be inaccurate. Rehab. Turns out we needed to do a foundation and replace a water heater. So inflated our roughly $12,000 rehab budget, close to $20,000. These aren't exact numbers, but it's roughly what it ended up being. This rehab too, we thought it was just a make-ready rehab. That's why these numbers are low, because we thought there's nothing major that needs to get done, but square footage adds up. Even if it's simple stuff, that price adds up. So we thought $12,000 was a lot to budget for just a make-ready. Well, foundation had to get done, so bang, right up to $20,000. I was self-managing, so that's another thing. Another mistake of ours was self-managing. Do not self-manage. Look, I know some people may say you should self-manage so you can learn how to do property management and know what to expect, but you're not a property manager. You don't have experience managing properties, and even if you follow the steps, there are things you will miss just by your lack of experience. We tried to self-manage, and that led to us moving in people that were bad tenants, bad about paying. We thought we were doing all the right things, checking their income, checking their credit, but we didn't even pull like a background check because we didn't understand. Like I thought if I just looked their name up in the court records, I would know if they got evicted. So little stuff like that, and letting them negotiate the deposit. Again, we could have probably done a little research on property management and done a better job, but we thought, how hard could it be? You just check that they have a job, decent credit, move them in, and if they don't pay rent, like they have to, they have a lease. It's not that smooth, especially for low-income housing. So vacancy rate, we ended up moving people in. 2 months later, they stopped paying, or they would start making partial payments. And then these partial payments, we'd let it slide, and then they'd have this huge balance, and we'd get stuck with it. We don't know what to do. And then that makes this $950 rent even lower because they're making partial payments. And then vacancy rate, because after that 2.5 months, 3 months, we finally evicted them. And then that led to the unit being vacant again. And then we had to wait another month or two. It took us another month or two to get it ready to go and rented again. So vacancy rate ended up being higher, and collections ended up being much lower as well for our first few properties. So long story short, our first 5 houses, each one roughly panned out like this. Looked great in the spreadsheet, and then these were the items that caused it to not perform like we wanted them to. Again, we had rose-colored glasses. We were just like, I want to get in real estate. I want to get rich in real estate. So we padded the spreadsheet, and then we'd be disappointed with the performance, and we'd get frustrated when, if we had just managed our expectations in the spreadsheet and padded them the opposite direction, pillaged them, went extremely conservative, then, maybe it'd be a little less exciting of a deal, but our expectations would have been more realistic. The deal, what actually ends up happening, worst case scenario, it hits our baseline of our really conservative, aggressive, under exaggerations of how the deal will perform, and it meets baseline. We're like, yep, about what we expected. Best case scenario, because we assume the worst, everything above that is bonus. So biggest takeaway from streets versus sheets is assume the worst possible scenario and numbers and comps in the spreadsheets. And then the actual performance of the deal, everything should be bonus. That takes me to the next lesson, which is always be looking for the next deal. Get to the next deal. How do you save a bad deal? You get your cash out of it and get into a better deal. So for us, our first 5 were rough deals. Bad parts of town, not the best cash flow, a lot of maintenance, a lot of headaches. Owning them carried a lot of risk. The solution to getting your risk out of that deal is get your money out of the deal. Robert Kiyosaki says something along the lines of, you have $1 million worth of debt, you have a problem. If you have $1 billion worth of debt, it's the bank's problem. Well, we kind of apply that mentality with our houses, whereas if we have all our cash tied up in a house and something goes wrong, we carry a lot of risk because we have a lot of money tied up in that property. Now, when we refinance it and have all our cash out, our initial investment, it's basically like we'd never even bought a house, and the debt is on the bank. We like to think about it when we cross that point, it's the bank's problem. Now, of course, we still carry that debt, but that's just our mentality with how we approach cashing out our properties. Now, where that gets even better though is when you take that cash out of the deal, that was maybe a crappy deal, and you put it into a better deal, then the sin of this deal is washed clean by the performance of the next one. And odds are from your first deal, you will have learned some lessons and you'll maybe learn how to underwrite better. And maybe, you'll just have gotten a better pipeline of deals. So your next deal that you buy with maybe this crappy deal is going to be better. Now with this deal, you have an opportunity for it to work out a little bit better. So that's why I drew crappy deal is not so crappy if it gets you into a better deal. Because then you can justify, hey, look, that deal sucked. We regretted it, bad part of town. But look, it got us to the better deal. And even if this deal ends up not being good, as long as you can get your cash out of it, or most of your cash out of it, and do a little bit better of a deal, it's like you get to roll the dice again on getting a better property. So the more times you repeat this process using the cash out refi, so for context, like how we're getting the cash out of the deal, we are using a DSCR lender, not a bank. I'll have to talk about that more, but that's how we're getting our cash out of these deals, buying them in cash, low income, rough stuff, and then we are cash out refinancing into another deal. So even if this deal is bad, we get to roll the dice again on this deal. And what happens just by the volume of you doing the BRRRR strategy, buying, refinancing, and getting to the next deal, is you get to roll the dice more times, and where you can win on, say, hey, like the numbers we put in the spreadsheet, the more deals you do, the greater the odds are of you hitting that home run deal, that you get the appraisal that's way more than you bought it for, or the rent's higher than you bought it for, or it's in a better part of town. And what I'm getting at, as long as you get your cash out and into another deal, you get to roll the dice again and potentially get a better deal. Then if that deal isn't good, you do it again. Doing this just takes all the pressure off of one deal being great. So breaking this down, I realized I need to talk a little bit about our strategy on how we bought all these houses. So I'll talk about that next. This is gonna read left to right, kind of like a conveyor belt. First thing, we did a ton of marketing to homeowners to find discounted off-market deals. Cold calling, mailing, texting, SEO, PPC, SMA, every possible marketing channel we could. These deals then funneled into our pipeline, our CRM, and that is where we would either wholesale them and make an assignment fee anywhere between $5,000 and $40,000 a deal. This income then allowed us to cherry pick our favorite deals to join our portfolio. Now, the portfolio we built, even with our wholesale income, the amount of deals we came across, we would not be able to buy with cash alone. So our DSCR lender, who lends based on the property's income and your credit score, not your income or tax history, the DSCR lender helped us finance the rest of the deals. Our first few deals, we bought 100% in cash and hard money. And then those deals we refinanced with our DSCR lender. Then each deal we refinanced got us into the next deal. And that's how we were able to keep funding the deals we were cherry picking off. So between the DSCR lender and the initial properties we bought in cash, we'd buy a house in cash, remodel, refinance it with the DSCR lender. And then by the time we got our cash out of the deal, we'd immediately have a fantastic off-market discounted deal ready to go. Every deal we bought was so discounted that after the remodel and we went to refinance, we pulled out more cash than we put in. That is not common with the BRRRR strategy. The BRRRR strategy, 90 to 100% of the cash you put in. But because we focused on building a deal pipeline first with our marketing, we just had access to the best deals that we could get at such a discount that on the refi, we're pulling out more cash than we put in. So we were able to buy more houses quicker than any other investor because of the rate our equity was growing and our marketing. With our portfolio, cash flow is prioritized to allow us to buy more deals. It is not going to us. We pay ourselves our salary from wholesale. Cash flow just goes towards helping us buy more and more houses every month and handle more debt. So we do not touch cash flow for paying ourselves. Cash flow strictly goes to the machine that can buy, remodel, and refinance a house like that. Stuff like our assistant, our general manager or contractor that runs all of our jobs, and then just making sure we have buffer to handle more debt. We don't touch cash flow for paying ourselves. Big emphasis. We use cash flow to handle more debt and grow the machine that builds our portfolio. What we really care about in the portfolio is every deal we touch, we get so much equity. The cash flow is negligible when every house we buy, our net worth goes up by a minimum of $40,000 to $60,000 because of how much equity we create on the back end. So that is why we prioritize cash flow for buying more doors, not for paying ourselves. Biggest lesson out of all this though was the transition of viewing cash flow as a way to pay yourself to cash flow being oxygen to keep things running is what allowed us to scale more quickly, because then we're okay with leveraging up more, hiring people in order to grow the machine and not be relying on cash flow to pay ourselves our salaries. So then we take our personal paycheck out of wholesale. I'm going to show a little bit more about the BRRRR strategy. Here's how we would buy our houses. We'd buy them in cash or with hard money mixed in. For example, $50,000 purchase price. We do a remodel, so say $25,000 remodel. After the remodel, the house is now worth $100,000. We take out a loan for $75,000, which now that gives us enough cash to repeat the whole process again after it's been refinanced. Our monthly income from each property is going to be roughly between $50 to maybe $200 after rent pays for mortgage, taxes, insurance, property manager, and miscellaneous costs and fees, which may not sound like very much, but look, we got all our cash out, and the way this is effective long-term is that each house gives you that $50 to $200 worth of cash flow, and you can repeat it many, many times in a row very quickly. And then all of a sudden, if you have say 100 houses giving you $100 a month each, that becomes a real number. So the whole point of this isn't how much cash flow you get on the one house, it's scale and volume. So that was a lesson we learned, was that one deal is not going to make you rich. The strategy relies on volume. For us, our mentality had to move away from focusing on one deal being fantastic, and we had to shift our focus to more so how can we make this scalable and how can we make this something we can do for a very long time? Because after our first few deals, it became very apparent that this is going to take a long ass time to become very wealthy off our portfolio. When we realized that, our mentality no longer was, hey, this deal, we're gonna make X amount a month. And we loosened our grip on every single deal being perfect and shifted our focus to how can we make this something we can do for a decade? And how can we make it as effortless as possible to go from deal to deal? So I'd say that around year 1.5 when we really realized hey, we need to stop spiraling about every single deal being perfect or the numbers not working or oh my gosh, there's problems, is this whole strategy bust? We made the switch and focused on, hey, let's see how much we can enjoy the people we work with, how much we can enjoy the process of doing these houses, how effortless and boring can we make buying houses and remodeling and refinancing, and let's make this something we can do for a decade. So we had a meeting with our accountant in 2025. She went through our books and talked to us several times, and she was like, hey, let's make 2026, here's the theme. We're sitting on the edge of our seats. We're like, oh boy, what is it going to be? It's going to be some crazy big money mantra or whatever. And she said, the theme of 2026 is boring. Hearing that from our accountant really solidified it in our minds that the right thing to do is to loosen our focus and grip on the deal, the one-by-one deal, and focus on keeping it sustainable. Rapid fire, last few lessons. So first thing, bookkeeping. Start it earlier and don't neglect it, because last 6 months we've been having to do a lot of catch up on our bookkeeping. We didn't have a standard operating procedure on how we did bookkeeping, and now we have a CPA that handles it. We wish we started it sooner, and we wish we took it more seriously and started having a process for contractor receipts go here, bank statements we upload here every month. Start bookkeeping earlier. Second thing, HUDs. Always read your HUDs, both from refinances and purchases. We saved a lot of money this year just because we read the HUD, caught certain line items for both stuff we were purchasing, like pointing out prorations, getting prorated rents, or making sure prorated taxes are done correctly. And on refinances, using this to kind of push back at our lender a little bit to make sure we get better prices on processing and fees. Contractor contracts. Do not do handshakes with contractors. Look, I don't care how good a relationship you have with them or how buddy you are or how good they take care of you. Get contracts with deadlines and payment schedules. We did way too many handshakes and that led to budgets going over, timelines going over, jobs not getting done the way we wanted to, and we didn't have a paper trail. Pretty obvious, but contractor contracts don't go off of handshakes. More reserves. Just because you refinance and you have, say, $100,000 doesn't mean you should go out and buy an $80,000 property with a $20,000 remodel. Leave some money in reserves. We wish we did that because when we'd get a big refi, we'd spend all of it on the next property, next remodel, even till far to the point where we'd be running remodels on credit cards and we're counting on the next refi to pay off those credit cards. Way too stressful, way too risky. Don't do it if you like to sleep at night. Three-legged stool. So this is kind of more of a marketing, wholesaling aspect, but have more than one, have at least 3 channels where you're getting your deals. So this could be, you have a good wholesaler, you have a good realtor, and you do a little bit of your own marketing. Whatever it is, do not be dependent on one source of deals. Don't be dependent on one wholesaler. If you have 3 sources of deals that are consistently sending you deals, this will make sure that it's predictable when you're getting your next deal. So as long as you have a 3-legged stool, you don't need to stress too much about, hey, I got a refi coming up, when am I gonna get into another deal? Last thing this connects to that one is no deal is better than a bad deal. There are certain deals we said yes to just because we wanted a deal so badly, when if we just practice a little bit of patience, there's a better deal around the corner that our money could have gone so much further. So you can, honestly, the easiest way to have the ability to say no to a deal is to have access to more deals. These two go together because you have a 3-legged stool, you have the ability to say no to more deals that you really shouldn't be saying yes to. The last thing, little bonus, hire an assistant. You can do a virtual assistant in the Philippines. I like onlinejobs.ph. What you'll find is you can focus on the higher leverage things. So hiring an assistant allows you to be more leveraged, so you can focus on building your deal pipeline. You can focus on sourcing better contractors. You can focus on getting better DSCR lenders. Dan Martell, Buy Back Your Time, fantastic book, but if you don't have an assistant, then you're your own assistant. An assistant doesn't even have to be that expensive. Like onlinejobs.ph, you can get a really cheap assistant and they're great. But if you can't afford it and you really are wanting to scale, the first hire you should make is an assistant. They'll handle making sure closings are done right. They'll handle filing, getting things over to your CPA if you have one, or they'll just do their own bookkeeping, keeping everything organized. They'll help you manage projects. And yeah, as soon as we hired our assistant, Lindsay, our lives got so much better. We started to really understand how valuable our time is. And I only check my email now once a day for 15 minutes. My partner and I have a touch base with our assistant on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And in those meetings, she goes over any urgent things in our emails. And it's great because I have so much more clarity to focus on what we need to be doing to grow our portfolio. So it may be hard to pull the trigger in the beginning, and you will not get an ROI till probably a year and a half after hiring an assistant, but just the peace of mind and ability to think better and focus on scaling is worth every penny you'll pay. Closing thoughts. If I could boil down the most important lessons we've gained over the last 3 years, it comes down to reps and volume. I could give you every single lesson I have, and you could read through every single lesson, but odds are when you start buying deals, you're gonna run into problems that I haven't ran into, or maybe wasn't applicable to my situation or our deals we came across, and you'll be confronted with problems that would not be addressed by every lesson I possibly have. What I can guarantee is that if you focus on volume of deals you're looking at, deals you're buying, deals you're remodeling, and keeping your focus on getting exposure to more deals you're underwriting, more deals you're buying more deals, and focusing on the reps of owning real estate, refinancing real estate, then you will, in time, learn all the lessons you need to learn just by doing more deals. The biggest lesson is just get to the next deal. Get your cash out, get to the next deal. Don't get so caught up on one deal. When you get so focused on one deal, that's where you have these landlords or slumlords that are literally doing their own repairs, being their own handyman. And they're so focused on the one deal that they get stuck on that deal. And that deal, it might be a sinking ship, but they're putting all their time into it. And if they would have just shifted their focus to the next deal, then they lighten the burden of their past mistakes on past deals. Given enough reps of this, you'll eventually figure it out. I know for a fact the next 70 houses we buy will be smoother remodels, better tenants, better collections, better refinances, just smoother all around. And the next 70 after that will be even better. So repeat that cycle a few times. And when we're at, say, 1,000 houses, we don't really care about our first 70 houses because they got us to the next 70 and then the next 70. Who cares how crappy your first 70 were as long as they kept getting you to the next deal? Eventually, it averages out, it stabilizes, and you'll naturally gain enough lessons along the way for your portfolio to start averaging upward in the better. I have a free school community where I'm trying to just dump everything my partner and I have learned over the last 3 years, our mistakes, our wins, our losses, and it's an active community. So ask questions. And yeah, we'll be fully transparent with deals that go well for us and deals that don't go so well for us. And also we'll be dispoing some of our deals in there, stuff we don't buy. So please join up. It's in my channel description, or you can go to my Instagram, Alex Zaslowski. Yeah, comment any questions. Thank you for listening.